everybody, and welcome to my hype and speculation video about XCOM 2. If you couldn't tell, in this video I'm going to be hyping over and speculating about XCOM 2, which is a game I'm ridiculously excited for. You see, XCOM 1 was probably one of my biggest surprise favorite games of all time, and well, I just cannot wait for this game to come out because it is fucking awesome. The first game was, at least, and it is looking so cool that pretty much like, fuck it, no, you didn't win the first game, you actually lost the first game, and now you get to live with the fact that you have to fight with the Resistance, which I think is a really cool change. I think it was kind of the right idea where to go. That instead of just making us go, be like, we're gonna go ahead and invade the moon or something like that. It's like, no. They're evolving on the concept. They're like, no, well, we're gonna make you doing it, but a bit of a different concept, I guess. But it's awesome. I just cannot wait for this, really. So here we have our first look at the Avenger, which is the craft which you'll be having. Instead of having XCOM HQ, you're going to have a kind of a flying guerrilla warfare fortress, which is kind of awesome. And well, first couple of things to notice is there's no elevators anymore. There's just kind of a ladder shaft, I guess, which is interesting, considering that the aliens did have like hover elevators in the first game. And this is an alien shift that they've retrofitted to do things with. But, if you look in the middle, there are 12 sections in it, with 9 available. So I'm thinking it's going to be a 4x3 for your ability to build facilities. But it could be a 3x3, and I'll get why I think it's actually going to be 4x3 soon. But, yeah. So we have also a couple of areas. Some of them seem to be relatively intact, like those guys that are flanking on the sides. But then the ones in the core of the ship are broken, so I have a feeling like that's going to be the equivalent of having the excavations in XCOM 1. That there are sections of the ship that are just too broken, so you have to first kind of fix them up before you can actually do anything. It also seems that every single room has some sort of power core to it, except for those 2 in the bottom, which have like crazy mega power cores. I'm not really sure what to think about them, but I'm curious if those might be kind of like some sort of like fission generator like base things which you can build generators on, or if that's just kind of a decoration per the room. I don't know, it's hard to tell, but because those guys in the middle clearly don't have them, but they're also clearly broken. But then those guys in the bottom also don't look like they're broken. But other than that, some things that I've noticed is, one, you see where you are in the background, which is kind of fun. I imagine that'll probably be changing as you move from Africa to Europe to, you know, the Americas and what have you. But also there's a lot of kind of empty space, which is interesting. That I feel like it's smaller and thus everything else is bigger, because you look at that, like the hangar bay is one ship, which kind of makes sense. At least now they're going to have only one ship, and you can't complain about having multiple Sky Rangers. You have like the cargo bay, which is huge, and the science area, which is a giant-ass generator of the ship. And it's interesting. I'm curious why they take so much space up, if they kind of decide that we want this many rooms and then just kind of fit them in there. Because there's all this area in the ship, and it's like, I feel like there could be more. But yeah, it looks cool. Also, I'm not really sure what's on the bottom there, if those are just there for decoration, or if there is something specific about those 2 very bottom sections, and then that little extension off of the engineering bay. So one of the first things I've gathered from the trailer here is that the game seems to be much more cinematic. People seem to be addressing you more, which comes out to some weird camera angles, so I'll talk about that later. But this guy looks cool. He's Dr. Titan. And he seems to be your scientist. He's replacing Dr. Valen, I guess. Hopefully he won't be speaking as much, but I like him. Now, I feel like the plot of this game is going to revolve around this chip he's talking about that he found in your brain, which he's going to come up to shortly. If you look in the back of his head, he's got a pretty big scar on the back of his head too, which is curious because he also seems to be confused as to what the nature of your chip is, but he's also clearly had some sort of work done in his skull, which is interesting, to say the least. But, you know, I'm looking forward to it. He seems like a really interesting character, and I'm very curious as to why you, who is the commander from the last game, were kept in stasis with a chip in your head, and where's that can lead in the plot. So we have the science screen here, and it's very much the same thing from the last time. I know you have a project, you have a number of scientists, you have, you know, days to complete, but it also has a requirement of 2 Advent Trooper corpses. Now, in this game, you have to loot things to get stuff. It's no longer like you get to have your team sweep in and, you know, collect all the stuff off of your dead and theirs. No, you have to actually capture stuff. So I'm curious if you're gonna have to actually, like, capture or, like, drag Advent soldiers with you into the, your escape ship, if you will, the Sky Ranger, to do this, which would be interesting. If you want to actually progress with tech and items and whatnot, you might have to actually go ahead and have one soldier not fight anymore. And here's one thing I really like, that you actually have scientists. No, they're not just a number, and there's a number there if you really wanted one, but you actually have people to assign to jobs, that you're no longer just having 52 nameless scientists and 75 nameless engineers. No, they're people. Same here with the medbay. You see, you can actually apply both soldiers and engineers to the medbay, which is really interesting, that you actually have people going to do things that soldiers can do stuff. Like, this is Andy Saltzback. He's just an engineer, but being applied here, he has a role to do, which would be cool. They actually kind of know your engineering teams. So they've mentioned Dr. Shen earlier in the video, and I was like so excited, or rather Shen, because I love Dr. Shen. Well, it turns out, and you'll find out here, that Dr. Shen is gone. They don't say he's dead explicitly, which is interesting. Though I think I saw a 3D printer in the background there. I wonder if I can point that out. But she seems interesting. Kind of like a younger person. Yeah, you can be knocked in the face with that thing. But yeah, it looks like a 3D printer, which is kind of fun. But anyway, so this is Shen's daughter, Dr. Shen being the engineer from the last game. And it's cool, I guess, because, you know, he dies, I suppose, and his daughter takes up the reins as an engineer and as a scientist, which is kind of fun, that she says that, like, she can build anything they make. And it's interesting, because that sounds really familiar. I feel like I've seen that in another game, but I can't quite get my head on it. But yeah, so, she seems like a really interesting character, I guess. Just like Dr. Titan, that seems to be that it's much more cinematic, much more character-driven. But also, when you kind of look at the fact that this camera shot is like panning and around, but then back, but you are also knocked away by it, but you're also supposed to be the commander, I'm kind of curious why you're flying around like this, because they're kind of shifting from the first person to cinematic angles. But we got the engineering program again, but instead of just doing things in engineering, you have to actually go to what I'm calling the proving grounds, which I guess is probably just the equivalent of it, but I feel like you assign a project to a proving ground. Because like they're going here and they're putting stuff in, I think they can do the experimental ammo, which is kind of fun, that you kind of get an ammo out. That's whatever the engineer kind of just decided to build at the time, which feels suitably like ragtaggy. I'm curious how that's going to kind of play out, though, if you really want to rely on that. So here they go, they're going to apply Tommy Pernelli in here, and you can see now he's actually here, you know, working on that project. But as soon as they go out, this is why I think that this is going to be 12, or like 4x4 for a total of 12, that I think that you're not going to just be having like a science lab, like the lab, and then have like, you know, additional labs and the foundry and stuff. I think that you can have a bunch of proving grounds and a bunch of med bays and a bunch of the guerrilla tactics schools, because when I look at it, like, it makes sense. Like, every one only really has room to slot 1 or 2 people to do things, and you can only seem to train 1 soldier per officer school and whatnot. So I think it'd be interesting to see that, like, you can only train 1 soldier at a time. So it's like, well, how many of those training grounds do you need? Do you want to really focus on research and have a bunch more people, or rather focus on engineering, have a bunch of people focusing on those engineering projects to get kind of fun little things? And then you have the med bays. Excuse me, sorry. The med bays where you want to just focus on having your people get healed or even respecking and stuff like that. So I kind of like that. I hope that there is more than just those 3 buildings. But it'd be interesting to see if maybe instead of having like a foundry and a a mechanical augmentation lab and a genetics augmentation lab and stuff like that, you maybe just upgrade the main facilities instead. I'm not really seeing any reference to see this, but that'd be interesting to see because those guys do take up a significant portion of the area. But while we're here, I just want to point out you have what looks to be the officer or like your quarters up top, which is kind of fun. Like you're the captain of the ship. You have the science lab and the engineering kind of bay, also loading area. You also got the bar, which looks a little bit fun, and some sort of barracks or something like that. Which, I like those little touches, you're not just like the ship, like, these people have a bar, like, they probably drink themselves to sleep some nights because this shit is fucking terrifying. So I spoke about it, but I briefly forgot about, to actually show the guerrilla training school. So, here's it is. And I know it's interesting. You got a look here, and you have available soldiers who are training, but then you have the actual classes, which is kind of fun that you actually get to choose who does what. And there's a brief look at the classes there. I'll probably talk about those guys in the future. But, they kind of condensed the classes. Okay, yeah, so here in the armory. And you got the list of soldiers. The training, wounded. Looks like there's a lightly wounded option now. But, it's kind of fun. I mean, they look great. I mean, I love those glasses. Those are fucking cool, actually. I didn't even realize those when I was, watching this before. But, it looks like they're kind of doing the opposite, but the same thing as Long War. That instead of dividing all those classes into the two halves of classes, they're just kind of making each class have two different trees and going that way. But oh my god, there are so many options here. Like in my notes, I'm looking at it, and my note for this section is simply say, gush over all of the various customization options. Like you have all of the tattoos, all of the colorations, you can choose your eye color, skin color, and not without just like numbers either, but also just like, there's a color palette. There's also like the attitude and your voice. They don't have languages, which is kind of disappointing. I'm curious if they'll ever try to implement that. But like you got personality traits and shit, like that's fucking awesome. So I counted it, and there are, if I look over here, I think there's 24 different customization options. And each one of those has multiple ones. And, when you start making the math out, that's probably ridiculous numbers of combinations. But, like, I can also customize guns. Like, you got, like, an extra round of ammo. Or, like, you can change the color and stuff. Like, I think this game is going to be much... Compared to the base game and even Long War, it's going to be much more personal. That it's not going to be about just having your armies, but having, like, your soldiers and their specific equipment and whatnot. Which is really exciting, actually. And, of course, it doesn't seem like it could be an XCOM game without having the councilman here kind of groveling at you with his angry voice. But it's interesting. It's like, you're very clearly the same commander. He's saying it's good to see you again. His voice is particularly grovelier. And I did the math. Well, I didn't do the math. I kind of thought about the math for a little bit. If this guy truly is the main character from the kind of spin-off, the Bureau spin-off game, he'd be like 115 years old. Like, holy shit. But, so this is what I'm really excited about. That you're no longer just kind of spinning the globe and waiting for shit to do. Like, you're moving around and finding things. It's kind of like how, like, yeah, you are kind of like the Resistance. And, what I've noticed is that, intel is actually a form of research. Or a form of, currency. That you can probably spend later on. Because if you look, and I'll be back eventually, East Africa is generating 150, like, broadcast towers per whatever. Which means that it must be some sort of, like, communication points, some sort of intelligence points. Which is interesting because you can't actually see them there. Now, I'm not sure if I spoke about it yet, but you have supplies instead of credits. Which is interesting. Not instead of money, you're using just supplies, which makes sense. You're not really sure how many people really want to get paid cash when you're in some sort of, like, weird alien dictatorship. Which wouldn't accept them anyway. Oh yeah, so intel is on the top, actually, yeah. There's a intel, you have 32 intel in this thing. And they picked up 80 supplies, which is their resource, okay. There's also a contact number. That they started this demo off with 1 out of 3 contacts, but since they made it there, they have 2 out of 3 contacts. So I'm curious what exactly that means. If there's simply like of the available contacts, they've met 2 of 3 of them, or they can only really afford to support 3 contacts at a time, and maybe each contact is almost like a council nation, that like you would get extra resources from having the contacts. I'm not really sure. Yeah, see, now there are 3 out of 3 contacts, and they're at low intel now. So they're, whatever it is, they're at max, but their income doesn't seem to have changed. And here you can see that, yeah, you can actually reveal another hidden event in this week, in which you can actually pay intel to get, but they can't afford it. But it looks like you can even kind of tell like the teching up of the aliens, which is kind of fun. Yeah, it looks like you have guerrilla ops, which are kind of probably your regular like basic mission. They got different rewards and stuff. Very much similar. I'm curious if the more contacts you have or not is that. But yeah, so that's kind of what I think about this in the trailer. I hope you guys kind of like what I'm thinking about. Once again, you have some very fun, cinematic-y looking things. Obviously, they're showing this off to make this game look more cool and exciting for people. And well, I can't wait to play it. Hey guys, and thank you so much for watching my first hype and speculation video. If you like what you guys saw, please let me know in the comments and like the video. And well, if you want to see more of these in the future, let me know. I know what do you guys want to see from this channel. And of course, if you're new here or if you're not subscribed yet, please do hit that subscribe button. It helps me a lot to let me know exactly, which one of you guys actually want to watch my videos and not. So, well, yeah, just, drop a comment, drop a like. I want to do a favorite, I'm not going to complain. But, really, thank you guys for watching, and, well, I'll see you guys next time.